everyone, I'm Ben. I am the location pastor at the River Church Davison. Thanks so much for checking out one of our messages today. We'd love to connect with you and your family. One easy way to do that is to text River Connect, one word, to 97,000. Or you can visit our website at theriverchurch.cc to learn more about us and our upcoming events. If you'd like to give to the River Church today, you can text the amount you want to give to 84321, or you can visit our website and click the Give tab at the top of the page. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the message today.
So, it's weird to think that this is kind of like one of the last few weeks of Proverbs, and if there's one prayer I've had, is that the verse I've used since the beginning of May, one, has not become redundant, but it has become something where you can store that truth into your heart. The truth that we've been doing is Proverbs chapter 21, verse 30. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. You can think whatever you want. God has given you free will. You have the right to have any opinion about anything, but it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, no wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. God's ways always win. You can think you're going to go do it your own way. You can think you're going to try to cut corners. You can think whatever you want. At the end of the day, God's ways always win. I've read to the end of the Bible. God wins. But for us, when we look at this, it was actually fun because I just was coming from Goodrich. I haven't preached Goodrich all year. So for me, like all through the summer, this verse has been this driving force for me through this entire book. Because as much as you go, if you're talking about, again, from Lord and Father and Mother, we talk about drunkards and sexual immorality, we talked about sloths, we talked about so many different people that we've run into. Every single time, you can think your opinion. You can know, this is what I think about work ethic, this is what I think about, again, not talking to different people, or can I look, can I not, can I drink, can I not, like wherever it may be. We still land on one central truth. God's ways always win. And so on our road trip this week, we meet a rather interesting character because we run into the kings. And if you read through the book of Proverbs, you will see Proverbs about leadership. You'll see Proverbs about ruling. And so for us, like we could have a really, really quick sermon today. We could say, well, we have one king. His name is Jesus. He rules with absolute power, absolute authority. He rules with absolute love, mercy, and forgiveness. Amen. And if you know that truth, let's go to lunch and we'll call it good. Some of you are like, are you doing that? Can we go? For the rest of us, again, but that is the truth. Jesus is the absolute king. So every leader ought to reflect Jesus. And God didn't set it up for leaders to just go be leaders. God has set and we'll get to the verse in Romans in a second, God has set every single leader up for a very particular reason. God has set every single king up for that reason. So for us though, like when we hear king, where's our brain go? Typically speaking, it's American Revolution. We go to the tyrant King George and the Boston Tea Party and give me liberty and give me death. That's where we live. That's our understanding of this is what a king is, because we don't live in a monarchy. We don't have God Save the Queen. We don't have things like that. We have presidents. We have senators. We have congressmen. We have state representatives. Again, they come and they go. They're elected for the people, by the people. And I'm not looking to get super political right now, but that's what we have. So for us to think about the ruling fist of a king, it's not really the culture that we live in. So it'd be like, let's talk about kings all day today. That's not, it'd be a hard jump. But I do think instead of looking at the word kings, I think if we look at leaders, I think for the most part, every single person can turn around and say, yeah, that's an understanding, that's a context that I can understand, because all of us have a leader. Now again, we already talked about Jesus being the highest leader of all leaders, but in the same right, do you have a boss? Your boss is your leader. Now, even if you're like, but I have the owner, then the boss, and the general manager, then the assistant general manager, and then it's 7,000. And again, it's a very complicated system, but in the same right, you would still understand this is a leader. For some of us, we can go, well, pastor, you're a leader of the church. You're right. Now, ultimately, again, Jesus is above me. And then I have people who are, again, I submit to leadership of the church. But you're right, again, there's that aspect. Okay, Ryan is the location pastor of Burton, so there's some leadership of it. Everything rises and falls. If something bad goes down here, it is my fault. I've taken that as that. And again, people look at me and Bree hates this, but again, if something goes south in nursery, it's my fault. If something goes south with the plumbing, it's my fault because I didn't talk about it. If a door breaks, it's my fault because again, it's what I do. It's the avenue that I've taken as the leader. I'm going to make sure I take that. But also we can start thinking more about leaders. We start thinking about husband and wives. Every single dude, if you're married, God has ordained, God has said it. So the male, the man, the husband is the leader of the household. This is spiritual leader. This is making sure that not just, again, in a spiritual sense, this is in a protection sense. We've talked about this a lot. If there's something that goes bump in the night in the middle of the night, and if you look at your husband and you say, get up, and he says no, dudes, we're going to have that counseling session one-on-one really, really quickly. Again, you're the first one up, and we've had this situation last night. Broly heard ice come down in the ice machine. Broly, for whatever reason, was sleeping on the couch because that's what kids do. But he's like, I heard something in the garage. I'm like, 3, 2, 1. Kathy, can you go check that out real quick? Yes, I will go check that out. And I was like, it's my role. And again, I was trying so hard not to be passive aggressive. I was ready to go to bed. But again, as the husband, yes, I'm the spiritual leader. I want to make sure that everybody in my house, my wife is being led closer to the Lord. In the same right, there's a physical protection aspect. There's also an economical leadership. I'm going to make sure I have a job. I'm going to make sure, again, I'm bringing home the bacon type of mentality. But that's the leader. For us, though, keep going. Some of us are parents. We have kids who we are the leader of. Some of us are grandparents. And that becomes a very, very interesting line because it's like, well, I'm not really your guardian, but in the same right, there's generational influence and all those things. But for us, we can see it from work. We can see it inside of our family where we're leaders. But also think about this, inside of the church. There's some great ministries that are going down the hall right there called nursery ministry, and they always need leaders. The littlest of the little need people to influence them closer to Jesus. They need a smile. They need a high five. And go further down, then you get the elementary age kids. They need the same thing. They need to be taught truth. They need to be influenced, to how to live for Christ. And if you really want to get crazy, we do this thing called student ministry. Woo! That's when it gets crazy. You get some high school, middle school kids, and you want to influence them too. But we have tech people, we have band people, we have people who are willing to come and clean. That's all leadership. But for us, looking at it, we got to understand leadership is synonymous with influence. So while we could say kings, we can get into some whole tyrannical dictator thing and all that stuff, but I think the easiest way for us to be able to apply the Word of God, because every single thing in the Word of God is written down for us to know and for us to be able to apply, even if we're talking about kings, we should be able to apply that to our life as well, because it's God's truth. When we think leadership, we think influence. So if you got a Bible app, if you got that, we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 25 today. 29 today. But to get there, in Proverbs chapter 25, it starts a set of proverbs called the Hezekiah Proverbs. And in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 1, it reads, "These are also our proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied." If you're like, who's Hezekiah? Hezekiah was one of the great reforming kings of the Old Testament. So he would have been a king who took over, and he looked at the way the nation of Israel was living, and he's like, you're not living for God. You guys are doing idol worship. That's messed up. That's messed up. That messed up. And he reformed it all. He was one of the top kings to look at the nation of Israel and be like, all of y'all are busted. All of you are sinning. All of you are out of whack. You guys are just lost your minds. Let's change this. But one of the things that we see in the Bible is, again, there's a group of people, the men of Hezekiah, took writings from Solomon, and they wanted to make sure they held on to it. So it's a really cool thing. Even when, God used Solomon to pen these, Hezekiah saw these, and God used these specific things from chapter 25 to chapter 29. So just one of those Bible little things for you there. But what's important is, again, the men of Hezekiah were focused on kings and rulers and leaders. They were focused on public character, and they were focused on moral life. So it was more than just, hey, let's just talk about the kings. Hey, make sure you do this, set up this, set up this. No, he was talking about how a king should rule, how a king should be. This is how you should be in the public. This is how you should conduct yourself in a godly manner. And these are all the things that we're going to talk about today. So kind of the question to kind of start us today is, where has God made you a leader? Just going to think that through. And you think, well, inside my family. So some of you husbands here, like, again, I'm the leader inside of my marriage. I have children. I have a job. I serve in a ministry. But where has God made you a leader at? For some of us, again, inside the church or inside your families. Some of you are parents. You think, I got kids, I got grandkids, nieces and nephews, fill in the blank. Again, that's an area I have influence. That's an area God has placed me where I have influence. So again, for guys, dudes, again, you're meant to be a leader. So God designed men. So we go back to the very beginning, Adam and Eve. But again, you're meant to be the leader inside of your household. In the same right, if women's are like, sweet, a leader, I don't have to be a leader. Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, and then the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. So one thing we know, God does not think that men should be alone for more than 45 minutes. That's something that we need to make sure we hold on to that. But again, I will make him a helper fit for him. So as much as, yes, it's the man's role to lead, there's also the woman's role to help support him to lead. It's that submission aspect. It's a God's plan for that. So again, it's not this totalitarian dictatorship of, again, the iron fist of a man. But it is this idea, again, a woman has a role too. You partner with that. Kathy helps smooth me out because, again, I need to be told sometimes you're being a little harsh on the kids. Your response is a little bit heavy right now. And I'm like, yeah, he's driving me nuts. I can't use that. Sometimes I need somebody on the other side of it. Again, when I get off a phone call from the church, I'm like, why am I having this conversation right now? This is what you signed up for to be a pastor. You're right. This is what I signed up for. So again, we don't void females when we look at this. But again, when we do look at guys, though, we do got to say, man, you're a biblical leader. You're a spiritual leader. You're meant to be that. Again, if something goes bump in the night, you're up first. You're not looking at her and be like, what do I do? No. You run through the wall if you have to. That's what you do. But also, again, if we look at inside the family, again, for mothers, though, like to hit this, like, again, there's nothing more influential than a mother. I look at what a mother can do. We'll get to a verse in a second. Again, moms are extremely influential. So to be able to say, like, well, that's a dad, again, if you're in a spot where you're like, well, there isn't one, again, that doesn't void that. We live in a culture where we do see single parents. We do see that. And again, that doesn't void the influence that a woman can have in somebody's life. Lorraine can still tell me something, and I'll be like, yeah, you're probably right about that. Again, there's those things. Kathy can do the same thing as my wife. So again, we don't void influence. But if you're like, okay, well, it's not necessarily in the family, and you want to try to go there, I'm single, I don't have anybody. What about inside of the church? Do you have influence inside the church? Do you serve? Do you ever talk to anybody? Because I guarantee if you hold the door and you smile when somebody comes walking in and you say, hey, I hope you have a great day, and you know their name, and then you see them when they leave, like chances are that person's going to be like, I think I want to come back. So we got to look at leadership as influence. Again, you can have that inside of your family. You can have that inside of the church. Also, you can have this at your job. How many of you are influential there? So for all of us, we have to take a second to realize, like, most everybody here, whether you like it or not, God has put you in some sort of place of leadership. You can try to figure out, like, no. Like, there's somewhere, something where you should be having influence on somebody's life. And to jump into that, so if we all have influence, if we're all kind of kings in whatever kind of hierarchy we want to land in, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 14 reads, if a king, so we said most everybody is going to be there, if a king faithfully judges the poor, his throne will be established forever. So on the surface, we can look at this and be like, okay, that's just talking about the thrones. That's just talking about a king. They just need to make sure that they take care of people and they're just and they're good kings and they're not tyrannical dictators. Sure. But I also think there's a deeper truth there. Because what a king does, a person with influence does, a person with leadership does, they do not treat people differently based off of who they are. They do not treat people who are in a lower stature than them differently. So this goes, number one, age. Because we all like looking down on high school, middle school, like college-age kids and be like, you guys just don't have it down. And Jesus, or book of James, talks hugely about the sin of partiality. Again, not making sure that you look at people like, well, you're older, ergo you're better. Oh, you're a man, ergo you're better. And you're white, ergo you're better. No, it's gross. You look down on people for a different socioeconomical class. Well, they're rich, they're poor. No. You grew up on the right side of town or you didn't. That's gross. Again, the Bible says if a king faithfully judges the poor isn't necessarily just a socioeconomical thing. It's meant to be, it's a status thing. If a king faithfully judges, meaning they do not look down on people, they take everybody on the same grain of salt because everybody is fearfully and wonderfully made. Everybody was created by God. A king, a leader, a person with influence can look at somebody and they faithfully judge the person for who they are. They don't come in with preconceived biases. They're not looking down on people. We have to hold to that. Well, you got a past, you don't. We all have a past. A big one for me, I think this is what you see in the church. Depending on what sin you struggle with depends on the way people look at you. Oh my gosh, they struggle with that sin, and that's hugely, hugely, hugely socially unacceptable. Yeah, but you're a gossip. So which one's worse? All you do is complain. Which one's worse? Yeah, you don't read the Bible. Which one's worse? So yes, there's different consequences for sin. But a king faithfully judges the poor, meaning they do not look down on people. Now again, do we got to call sin for sin? Absolutely. Do we got to make sure that we're living biblically? We'll get to that in a second, but yes. But if a king faithfully judges the poor, meaning they're not looking down and they're not looking at people differently, I love this, his throne will be established forever. Now, one of the things we got to kind of understand is, again, if you're like, oh, so if I just start doing really, really well in life, God will bless me. That's not really it, because Romans 13, verse 1, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. So if something is going to move generationally, if anything is going to be of any status, stature, or it's going to exist for a long period of time, any governing authority is there because God has put them there. So if this throne that you have, and you're a king, again, I want to make sure that my family throne keeps going. It's not going to be there because you did good work. It's not going to be there because you've done anything. It's going to be because God did something. It's because God's going to look at this covenant that, again, you have with him. Your desire is to make sure that he is at the center, and that is why it's going to continue. It's not because you're like, man, I was really, really nice as a boss, and man, GM's just going to exist for the next 90 years. It's not it. But when we look at it, a king turns around, and again, they love people. They have the ability to not look at people in the way that they look at people. They look at people the way that Jesus looked at people. Because Jesus hung out with harlots. Jesus hung out with the tax collectors. Jesus hung out with the sinners. He didn't have partiality. Jesus hung out with the Pharisees. Now, he argued with them a lot, but he still hung out with the Pharisees. Jesus hung out with fishermen. He hung out with everybody. There was no partiality in Jesus because, again, what did he want? He wanted to love everybody. God so loved the world. So first thing a leader does, a first person with influence does is, again, do they show partiality? So kind of a question for you, do you judge the poor fairly? Or is there that group that you're like, yeah, I look down on them. I look down on the rich, I look down on the poor, I look down on the white, I look down on men, I look down on this minority, I look down on this, again, there's all those things. We live in a world where it's like, what are you doing? Well, you got a divorce, so we're going to look down on you. You have extra kids, we're going to look down on you. Well, you can't go to camp, you wear these shoes, you do it. Goodness gracious. We all have that somewhere. We all know at some point we look at someone and we're like, what's going on with that person? To judge them fairly means you're not looking at the stature. You're looking at the person. So kind of real talk, like men, do you look at your wife as your own personal property? She's my wife. You don't have ownership, homie. Only God has ownership. Do you look at your kids and be like, these are my kids? Again, God gave you them. But it's so easy to look down. Like I do this so often. I can talk to my kids because they're my kids. I guarantee if I saw somebody talking to my kids the way that I talk to my kids, I might fight them. And I'm like, ooh. So I'm going to write that one down. I'm going to go pray to Jesus for a little bit more patience this week. But again, if I saw somebody respond to Zeke in the way that I sometimes do, I'd be furious. But then I do it because it's my kid. No, because my kid still deserves to see Jesus in me. I can't look down on him just because he's my kid. Same thing, again, churchgoers, do we look down on people? Do we look down on people who struggle? Look down on people who, again, they come and they're differently. I laugh. People get weird about tattoos. Somebody's probably going to send me an email because I'm wearing a flamingo today. Like, who knows? But we look down on churches. We look down on people. We do those things. That's not what it's supposed to be. Do we judge the poor, people who are lower socioeconomical, justly? Or are we just looking down on people? So if you want that generational blessing to go, and here's a big one, especially for parents. And again, you want your kids to know Jesus, serve Jesus, faithfully love Jesus. Again, we can read the Bible where it says, again, that throne is established. What's the number one thing you got to do? You got to love your kids in the way that they can see Jesus. Man, is my kid going to live for Jesus when he goes away to college? I don't know. How are you loving them now? Or are you looking down on them? But they're 13, they struggle. Most 13-year-olds do. But they get caught up over silly things. Yes, they do. But we have to take a second and understand, again, do we look down on their problems? Do we look down because they struggle? Do we look down because we're superior in wisdom and we have it all understood because we're 40? Which isn't the case. But we have to take a second and understand. We love people like Jesus loved them. So again, if you have influence, you reflect the person who's most influential with you. So God gave you that influence. Do you reflect Jesus in that influence? Do you talk to people? Do you get down on the level? Do you hang out with them? But I love the flow where this goes because, again, I can love people. That's an easy one for me to do, Ryan. But it continues because Proverbs chapter 29, verse 15 reads, "And the rod of reproof gives wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother." So remember when I said mothers are influential? The Bible talks about that. But I like this because it's not just a matter of like, I think you're great. I think you're spectacular. You're doing a great job. You're the best of the best of the best of the best. No, because with influence, if you have leadership, guess what sometimes you got to do? The rod of reproof needs to be there. You need to have a conversation. You need to have some sort of instruction. You got to look at somebody and be like, that's not good. That's not the direction you need to go. Because why? Because it gives wisdom. We've been talking about this through this entire book. What is wisdom synonymous with? Wisdom is synonymous with living for God. So I love this. Again, you're not disciplining because they broke your rule. You're not disciplining them just because you want to make sure that, again, I don't like what you're doing. You're disciplining them because they're straying off the path of where God wants them. And you're turning around and saying, that's sin, buddy. That's going to bring destruction, buddy. That's not a good spot, man. Again, you're not disciplining because of your moral righteousness. We discipline because, again, the rod and reproof brings wisdom. Wisdom is synonymous with walking with God. But I like this, though. Because for some of us, man, do we like using discipline. Man, iron-fisted, if my kid breathes the wrong way, I'm going to tell him. No. It's not where we're supposed to be. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's actually a growing thing where, again, there's no disciplining happening. I like this, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. An employee left to themselves brings shame. Imagine if somebody just starts at GM and you're like, all right, buddy, welcome to GM, you're hired, have a good day. There's all these big old machines. Yeah, go figure it out. If you work anywhere, just go figure it out. No, a person left to themselves does not bring anything good. So I like this, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Now, again, I'm not saying you're going to shame GM or shame Amazon or Jeff Bezos or anything like that, but we still got to look at this. Nothing is never the choice of a leader. If you have influence, nothing is never your choice. You can't look at your kids and be like, I'm going to do nothing about that. You can't look at your marriage and be like, man, that's not going in a direction, and be like, I'm going to do nothing here. Inside of the church, we can't just look and be like, yeah, nothing's the answer. Something has to be done. A person cannot be left to their own. We have to step in and we have to influence. Why? What's the point of influencing? We're trying to get people to live for God. Now, it has to be done fairly. It has to be done, again, you're not just like trying to pick a fight with somebody. But we have to look at this in this aspect of leadership and influencing. We have to make sure we correct. We have to make sure we guide. But in the same right, we can't go to the other side and just be like, I'm just going to be like sugarcoat the entire time. You're not going to give up the partiality aspect and looking at people and loving people if you correct them. That becomes the biggest thing. I talk with parents all the time, but I want to be my kid's friend. Why? Like, I love being friendly with my sons. I love going and playing games. Pokemon cards are all the thing right now. I love playing them. But in the same right, I'm not trying to be their friend. I'm their dad first. I want to make sure that I'm there. But again, we swing in this weird sense in leadership. Like, I just want to be everybody's buddy. You might not be able to. Because again, if you walked in and again, you left that new hire in GM, and again, he's hitting all the buttons, he blows up all the machines, and be like, hey friend, what happened? Well, I destroyed the entire plant. Like, oh, okay. But we have to stop and we have to think about this sometimes. Sometimes you need to correct people. Sometimes you need to say that's not good. And for a leader, it's heavy to make the right decision all the time. It's heavy that you have to respond. I say it all the time, heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's a Shakespeare thing. But in the same right, that's what you sign up for as a leader. And as a parent, guess what? You signed up to always help make those decisions with your kids. I don't care if they're 30, I don't care if they're 3. You're still there. In marriage, guess what? You're always there. Husbands, you have to constantly help your wife be spiritually led. You don't get to just be like, nothing, I don't want to do anything. Inside of work, you got to help. Because again, what is influence? Influence is given to us by God, and ultimately we want to reflect the person who gave us that influence. So we want to make sure that we're reflecting the gospel. And I love where this kind of goes, though. Again, left but to himself. Nothing is never the choice. Nothing is never the choice. Instruction is needed in people's lives. I'm 37, I think. 38? 37. 37, I was like, I had to think about that for a second. 37, I still need instruction in my life. I still need somebody to come and be like, hey man, is there any way that I can help you with this? I'm still trying to get better, but so often we're just like, I just don't want to do anything. But why do we bring about instruction? I love the flow of this, because again, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 16. And when the wicked increase, transgression increases, but the righteous will look upon their downfall. Why do we bring about instruction? Because we don't want to see people fall. One of the worst things in the world that the church can do sometimes is they can watch somebody from afar, they know their life is in ruin, and they're just like, let's just watch. Let's watch that bus just come and run them over. Again, if you walked outside, you're leaving church today. You're leaving the gathering, and you see a bus coming at somebody, and they're standing in the middle of the road. What are you doing? Hopefully you're yelling, or hopefully, again, you can run and you go tackle them and you get them out of the way. Nobody should sit and just watch somebody just their entire life just disintegrate. Now, again, you can say some stuff. Whether or not the person responds, that's on them. But we should step in if we have that influence. Hey, I love you too much to watch you destroy your life. I love you too much to watch you fall. Because again, this isn't just somebody writing, this is the word of God. When the wicked increase, sin, transgressions increase, but the righteous will look upon their downfall. If you're living an ungodly life, you will fall. The only thing I could think about was Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 7. Everyone that hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain fell and the flood came and the winds blew and beat on that house. But it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house. And it fell, and the great was the fall of it. How could we be okay with watching people's house fall? Now again, you can say something and the person doesn't have to respond. I bring up Jesus every single time I preach in some way, shape, or form. Does that mean that every single person repents and goes back to Jesus every day? No. But I'm still going to do it. Why? In the hopes that they do. But for us, again, an influential person, a king, a person who has been given leadership, are you okay, again, bringing these things up? Instruction, why do we discipline? Why do we want to make sure we say something? Because we don't want to see the person fall. Like, I look at my sons, like, and I'm constantly like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And they like fall and they hurt themselves, and I'm like, I got to work on my empathy, because I'm like, I told you 7 times not to do that. You still did. Here's some ice. But so often in life, sometimes we just like, oh, I'm just going to be quiet. I'm just going to watch. No. Because you've been given that influence. God has set you in that place in somebody's life to be able to speak truth to them. To be able to look at somebody and be like, hey man, this is going to be bad. The amount of times I have to say that to my kids, 1,000,000. And I'll say it 1,000,000 more. Because if it keeps my kid from driving his bike out in traffic, I'm for it. If I'm going to have to tell my kid about staying away from sin and he lives a life where he's honoring Jesus, not legalism, I'm for it. But so often, we don't speak because we're okay with the fall. Weirdly makes us feel more spiritually elite. Like, man, I'm going to step on that person. Yep, I avoided that thing. No. We want to make sure we talk. So again, we start judging fairly. We make sure that, again, we're resolving that nothing is never the choice. We make sure that, again, there's instruction. We want to make sure that we're guiding people. We don't want to see them fall. But I love the flow of this entire section because, again, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 7, discipline your son. Now, again, if you have a daughter, you have a daughter. If you got a coworker, you got a coworker. Again, sometimes you've got to say, that is not where you need to go. Sometimes there's instruction. Sometimes there's discipline. But I love this. And he will give you rest. And he will give delight to your heart. Why do we discipline? Why do you have those conversations with your spouse? Why do you have those conversations with your kid? Why do you have those conversations with your fellow employee? Again, the people who are below. Because hopefully it brings you rest. Because again, if you can have that conversation with, again, the person who you're managing, and they stop doing the thing that's driving you nuts, guess what you're going to be thinking when you go home later that night? Oh, sweet, the world's not going to come to an end. I can leave that guy in GM and I don't got to worry about what buttons he's going to push because he's not going to blow up the plant. Again, with discipline comes rest. But also with discipline comes delight. You know what the coolest thing in the world for me is? When you preach the gospel and you actually see people start to get it. Some of my favorite things in the world is when I watch, again, the young people, the young teenagers that I used to have, when they start getting it. When I see people's marriages get healthy, when we're doing a marriage growth community, I love that. When I see people get connected to the church, they start serving, you see them join community, they get it. One of the best things in the world is when you say something and people get it. Why? That brings delight, brings rest. They're understanding it. You're not just being a disciplinarian for the sake of it being a disciplinarian, but it brings you rest. And I thought about this, kind of, some of you here maybe, some of you in the past, we're kind of at that weird stage of like the beginning of August is when most high school seniors go away to college. And I kind of had that conversation again, 18 years with your kids to influence them. But thinking about this, do you have delight and do you have rest in your heart when your kid goes to college? Well, how do you get there? You got to discipline them. You got to instruct them. Never can never be the option. But you have those conversations. But then you do all of those things and then you trust that God is going to take it the rest of the way. So often, I've tried to rationalize this. So often, we just get caught up in getting more mad at our kids for breaking our rules rather than God's rules. We want to teach kids to faithfully live for Jesus. You want to see that throne get established. It's by teaching kids the right thing. So do you have rest with your kids? Do you have delight with your kids? And if not, why not? Do you have rest and do you have delight inside of your marriage? If not, what are you doing to help it? If you're like, well, I'm not married, I'm this, okay, inside of the church. Man, I'm going to bed and I just really wish I would have talked to that person. I really wish I could agree to that person. I really wish I got that person's number. Rest and delight when you start seeing people get it. And I'm here because I was thinking about this. I resolved this weekend while I was reading this. I have 12 more summers before Broly goes off to school. I'm terrified. Terrified. I don't know if he'll ever get a haircut. He weirdly goes through these weird phases where he runs around in ninja outfits. He hisses at people. Again, he does all these things where I'm like, are you going to be okay when you grow? Are you set? But more importantly are you going to choose Jesus? Are you going to be okay living for Jesus? Are you going to make sure that you choose God when you're in the midst of wherever you wind up? I want that delight. I want that peace. I want that rest. So what do I got to do? I got to teach my kid. Not iron-fisted, but I got to teach him. I got to make sure that I'm instructing him. I got to make sure I'm disciplining him. And I love this. Again, so if you get to a point where you're like, okay, I know I need to discipline. How do I go about doing this? I love the whole flow. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint, but the blessed is he who keeps the law. King James says it this way. Where there is no vision, the people will perish. Now, Proverbs doesn't talk about prophetic vision throughout the rest of the book. I read a commentary that was more talking about that guidance. Guidance of the word will bring about blessing. Guidance of the word will bring about life. Because where there is no vision, the people will perish. Where there is no guidance, people will perish. So what is that center thing that we got to make sure we do? And we say it every week. Is your discipline, is your leadership guided by the word of God? Whether you're working for a company, whether you have kids, whether you're in marriage, whether you're an aunt, an uncle, whether you're a friend, whatever it may be, whether you're serving here in this church, whether you're doing song, to tech, to nursery, to welcome, is everything that you have been given influence for guided by the word of God? Because like we said, a leader influences people to their leader. So who is our leader? We said in the beginning, Jesus is the sovereign king of the universe. Do you influence people back to Jesus? Because I love this. We use the word of God. Why? Because it's the guide back to Jesus. And for whatever reason, you can say this to Christians. And once you start going away from God, destruction. Where there is a word of God void, where there is no guidance from God, nothing good is on the other side of that door. And yet we still have people who will walk away. Why? Because there's no discipline, because there's no instruction, because we're looking down on people. So often with us, a leader's job is to instruct and discipline, to point people back to what they need to follow. So the question for you is, again, where have you been made a leader for? And how are you getting the people who you are leading to follow who you're following? Because the reality is, for some of us, we can look at our kids and be like, man, they're not following Jesus. Maybe because you're not following Jesus. For some of us, we can look at, why is my spouse wandering from Jesus? Maybe as a husband, I'm not following Jesus. We have to take a second to realize, are we truly following the person who has the utmost influence, and are we using the influence that God gave us to get people to follow him? Now again, everybody has the ability to make a choice, but we have to start looking at this. Do we want that throne to continue? Do we want it to keep going? And if we do, we got to start influencing people back to God. Everything from that entire section of Hezekiah points to Jesus, because Jesus judges unbiasedly. Jesus' throne is never ending. Jesus resolved to do something by bringing reproof. He brought the end of sin. Jesus brings delight and rest. Jesus is the guide that all of us need in our life. So for us, no wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. We can live a life where we think we're just going to do it our own way. We're just going to figure it out. I'm going to take my own philosophy and I'm going to get it done. It's not going to win. It's not going to avail. It'll be that sinking sand that you're trying to build your life on. And all it's going to bring is destruction and ruin. And the problem is, the more people you influence, the more people you follow, guess what? They're going to lash themselves and they're going to follow you, and they're going to be sitting on the same sinking sand you are. And when that wind blows, when that storm comes, it's a whole lot of people who are in store for a great fall. My plea for you, my hope for you as I'm kind of wrapping up today, as we wrap up leadership, where are you influential? You got kids? You a boss? Again, guys in here, again, are you married? Are you pointing people to the thing that influences your life the most? Are you pointing them to Jesus? Now, for some people, like, Jesus isn't the most influential thing in my life, then welcome to the world of repentance. Welcome to when we go back to God and we realize, like, you know what, my 401k, my paycheck, this hobby, that TV show, that became more influential rather than the true King of Kings. But for us today, I pray that you're able to find, where are you going? Where are you trying to lead people to? Because God has given you influence. Whether you want to walk out of here and say, no, I don't have any, look to the person next to you. Look to the person on the other side of the church to you. Look at your phone and who was the last person you texted. That's influence. God has put you in a place where we can point people back to him. So I pray that you're willing to, again, I like the statement, nothing is never the choice of a leader. I pray that you're willing to step into a place where you want to influence people back to Christ. And so you reflect the ultimate influence